Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying time is here. That's right. We're talking about 1988's The Blob on Kill by Kill. Well, greetings and salutations, Internet. It's your old pal Patrick Hamilton coming to you once again from Arborville. This is the Kill by Kill podcast, where we're dedicated to celebrating the least discussed component of any horror film, the characters. We're going to unpack all the goriest and goopiest details of the 1988 remake of The Blob in the hopes that a local ski town resident's untimely end is just the beginning of the jokes we might make at their expense. And as always, there's only one person I trust to frame me for condom purchases. The one, the only, Gina Radcliffe. How are you doing today, Gina?
I probably would do that, honestly. I mean, there's no other scenario in this movie that I want.
It's the only one you'll accept. You have to play off Del Close as he stares at you in Improv Olympic, trying to get you to yes and him.
Nothing ends well for anybody.
No, nothing ends well for anybody here. Even Shawnee Smith might be doomed to at least a few weeks of having to hang out with Kevin Dillon. And that in and of itself is a nightmare. But that is a tale for a different time. Gina, I don't want to scare you, but we are not alone. That's right. We have a special guest. Now, you may know him as a director whose latest film, The Jester 2, will have several special screenings via Fathom Events in movie theaters on September 15th and 16th. The one, the only, Colin Karwchuk. How are you doing today, Colin?
Good. I'm super excited because I absolutely love The Blob, and I was so excited when they told me that that's the movie you guys are going to be talking about.
Wonderful. Well, we can't speak highly enough of The Blob ourselves. This is actually the second time we've covered the movie, or in our earlier Patreon days, when there was the Wild West on that site. We would I think someone suggested that we cover the movie, and we're like, oh, of course. It's not like we're ever going to cover The Blob on main theme. We talk about Jason and Freddy movies. And, many years later, here we are. And I just thought, hey, A, we love the movie. And B, since we are talking Stephen King in this season, this is a very Stephen King coded motion picture in many respects, and we'll get into them. But before we do, Colin, when was your first time watching the 88 remake of The Blob?
I really can't recall the first time, but I have a vivid memory of, I think the only image that was in my head of the Blob movie from 88 was the phone booth explosion.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Now, I assume, because it's just Occam's razor, that you're probably a little younger than Gina and I. So I'm assuming you never saw this in the movie theater.
No, I did not.
Okay. Because I sure as hell did. I was there with bells on. I had to have somebody buy a ticket for me at the AMC 12 is what it was at the time. It no longer exists. It's now a building that houses a Pinkberry. And I think apartment buildings. Right across the street from it is a brand new AMC. But in those days, it was just an AMC unto itself. And yes, I had to, I wouldn't say bribe. I had to cajole. I had to beg someone to buy a ticket for me. And this was like everything I wanted to see. Because now, post Aliens and The Fly, anything with a goopy monster was something I absolutely had to ingest with a quickness. And I loved it from the get-go, and was sad to learn this movie was not a massive financial success. Gina, how about you?
No, I did not actually see this in the theater. I don't know why I didn't see it in the theater, because like you, it was right up my alley. But I just did not. I did see this as soon as it came on cable, and then for a long while watched it every time it happened to come up on cable.
Because this movie, with the exception of like a couple moments of like pull away, arms and whatnot, it is both gross but semi-bloodless. It is a movie where a kid dies, but you could show it on basic cable, nearly unedited, because it was so fantastical that I guess no one ever complained about it. And its reputation began to loom larger and larger despite its lack of financial success at the box office. And we're going to kind of begin to understand why when we dig into its backstory. But so, Colin, for you, did you have any sort of preconceived idea of what a Blob movie was from the 1958 original?
I feel like when I was watching this movie in preparation for this podcast last night, I was thinking about that, and I was getting a lot of Thing vibes, where they're both remakes in the 80s off of a movie from roughly the mid to late 50s. And I think are both huge improvements.
Yeah.
And that's not to say old, the older, more black and white mid-century movies are bad in general, but I think those were just, the ideas were so basic, and these just took those ideas and elevated them to something that I don't know, just makes them so much more iconic.
Yeah, I think they take the basic concept of them due to advancements in physical effects at that time. They were able to do a lot more with the idea at its core. I think with the Thing, it's returning it to the Who Goes There aesthetic of replacing people rather than a rampaging Frankenstein vegetable. Whereas here, the genesis of the Blob at its core is that Jack Harris, who was a Philly film distributor, had read an odd police report where cops had described an object that was a glowing, pulsating form, and then just said, no. Now that's a drive-in movie. And so I think that 58 version of the Blob is arguably one of the finest examples of that sort of sci-fi drive-in cinema. It combines Cold War fears, nuclear bomb paranoia with the and this one adds the military industrial complex to it. Yeah. But it is at its core one of those things that is odd for its era when you watch the original, because with Steve McQueen and everything, they're too old. Everyone in it is too old. McQueen is nearly 30. Stephen McQueen.
He looks like he has barely got the cigarette out of his mouth before the camera starts filming.
I mean, it really is true. Like many a horror teen that will, come up over the history of the genre, he looks more concerned about his mortgage than all-consuming space globs. And there's a reason for that. He gave up a portion of the film's profits to actually get a bigger paycheck up front, much to his regret later on. So, to keep his house, he did the Blob, but he could have bought a much better house if he had invested in the Blob. But who would know that this little movie about respectable looking rebellious teens and car culture was going to be as big of a deal and have as big of a tale culturally as it did. And I think it's because images from it are so evocative. You're like, wow, when you see that glob burst out of the front of a movie theater, even though it's like holes cut in a postcard, you're like, holy shit, that looks amazing. I bet you that movie is great. And then you watch it and you're like, wow, I'm really sick of the sheriff not listening to these teens.
Yeah.
But, in Jack Harris's mind, this was a programmer. He was aiming for an A, but he would have been fine if this was a B picture paired with I Married a Monster from Outer Space. And so the cultural tale of the Blob is, here's this creature feature that really fired a generation and has this very culturally interesting star at the center of it. And so, there's the Blob theme music, which I think Burt Bacharach was a co-writer on it. So
that's the best.
aligned.
That's the best part. Like if you've never watched The Blob, at least listen to the theme song because it's delightful.
It is a fun, bouncy tune. But I think that brings up something that becomes kind of important to this version of the Blob's retelling of the events. And that is 50s nostalgia, which is something, Gina, you and I kind of confronted when we talked about Stephen King's Christine. Basically, Stephen King and John Carpenter have two, I wouldn't say entirely opposing, but definitely they come at their 50s nostalgia with very different lenses. In that King understands and accepts the reality of what the 1950s actually were, and he does investigate that in his books, but he also enjoys the fantasy of American exceptionalism and uses that as a tool against the reader. Carpenter, however, enjoys sort of reveling in how much of that 50s golden era was a sham, that so much of it is driven by greed and a lot of racism and classism and certainly misogyny. And he wants to exploit that. He doesn't mind touching upon it, but he's never going to add any commentary to it that doesn't also say, hey, listen, these were cool cars in Christine's, parlance, but you kind of have to think that a lot of this is built on blood and sweat of unpaid labor. And it's coming back to bite these people in the ass. The Blob doesn't so much dig into that subtext of that beyond with playing with aesthetics. And a lot of the aesthetics at play in the 88 version are, well, here's this all-American couple who really don't look or act all that different from their 1958 counterparts. But it is, I'm going to tell you what you think is going to be the Blob story, and then I'm going to zigzag on you a little bit and which characters live to tell the tale.
Right.
I think that's one of the most exciting things about this movie is it takes so much time, which I love. I love how much time it takes in a Blob movie to spend with these characters and flesh out the townsfolk, only to pretty quickly, once the Blob starts happening, it's like, nope, you thought that sheriff was going to be a bigger deal in this movie? Nah. No, you thought that other guy was going to be, nope, he's gone. And it's like, it's the social scoundrel and the cheerleader that end up being the heroes. But I love we're going to set all these make these characters really, for a Blob movie, they didn't have to do this. They didn't have to spend so much time setting these people up and like, gee, I hope the sheriff picks this lady up from the diner. That doesn't matter. They get blobbed.
And this is where I thought, the Stephen Kingness of this, because it's happening in the aftermath of his literary works and so many of them being turned into movies, that his aesthetic when it comes to horror is starting to become a big motivating factor, and people are picking up on what he's putting down. And it's not like King hasn't actually talked about the Blob. Now, he doesn't go into it in a lot of detail, but every 5 years, I find myself reading Danse Macabre, King's sort of nonfiction take about how the horror that he consumed as a kid and a teenager and in college informs what he thinks horror is at that moment in time, the late 70s heading into the 80s. And so within Danse Macabre, he sort of pairs Blob with a few other 1950s alien invasion movies, noting that his teen protagonists are too old, for one, and that this group that you'll start to see, repeated in King's works in the original are ignored and dismissed by authorities when they report stuff that they've witnessed with their own eyes and ears. They're just not believed. And obviously we can see the long tail of that with things like It, obviously, but And a movie we just covered, Silver Bullet, has a lot of that. Cujo has elements. Needful Things has elements. They all kind of play in that same sandbox. And it's also important to note that this version of the Blob comes out post Salem's Lot, and even it, beloved entries in the Stephen King universe's "This Town is Going to Hell" genre. And obviously co-screenwriter Frank Darabont would go on to adapt several King works and kind of understands how to convey that tone pretty effectively within this screenplay and the other movies that he's worked on under the Stephen King banner. Darabont and co-writer and director Chuck Russell first met on the set of Gina, 1981's Hell Night.
Okay. Everything comes full circle. Everything comes full circle.
Everything comes right back to Hell Night, a movie in which 4 dweebs end up trapped in a house. And then the movie keeps going on for at least an hour and 40 minutes. Some of it's very entertaining. And some of it, you're like, I don't think people act this way on both cocaine and barbiturates. This does not seem realistic to me. Anyways, they met on that particular set. And Darabont's already a writer. Russell likes what Darabont's putting down, and they start working together. They end up collaborating on things like a Dreamscape, which we've long threatened to cover. And of course, A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. And despite that film's gigantic success the year before this in 1987, New Line said no to the pair's pitch for The Blob. They did not think this was a movie that could sell tickets. Weirdly enough, they were kind of right in the sell tickets. They just were wrong in that you couldn't make a good movie out of it. So it was New World Pictures that actually picked up the rights to the Jack Harris property a year before. And so when they had heard that these two had a pitch, they immediately went to them and said, we think we can make the economics of this work. They were wrong. New World Pictures went out of business while this was in production, and it was only TriStar Media who picked it up as a negative pickup later on that saved it from going nowhere into actually going into theaters. Of course, they couldn't sell it, which is part of the reason why this movie was a little bit DOA. Russell described seeing advertisements for this in the newspaper as they were trying to sell a used car and no one was buying.
Yeah, I mean, I think also you're struggling with there's no really name actors in it.
Yes.
Like, you mean, I suppose you had, I'm trying to think back to, the teen magazine era. Yeah, I suppose Kevin Dillon was kind of popping up by that point, although, of course, his brother was the much bigger star at that point.
Yes, much bigger.
Shawnee Smith wasn't really a thing yet. She'd done some television, but, even still, she didn't really become well known until she started appearing in the Saw movies.
Right.
You've got Donovan Leitch, who,
yes.
I think he was and also ran, like they tried to make him into something, and then his sister kind of ended up outshining him. For those who may not know,
he has an interesting. He kind of has an interesting thing that he goes and he kind of limps along for the. I think this is one of the best uses of him. As much as I love his performance in things like Break Into Electric Boogaloo and God Created Women, or a movie we haven't covered on the show, Cutting Class, which is a semi-slasher that doesn't make a whole hell of a lot of sense.
That's the one with Brad Pitt, right?
It is the one with Brad Pitt.
I think we've mentioned that one a couple times.
Yes.
So yeah, there's not a whole lot to sell it on.
It's certainly not sex wise or like, oh, here's this breakout new star. Kevin, we'll get into Kevin Dillon because it's a whole thing unto itself. But in terms of like, they just couldn't get people to understand how exciting the movie would be without giving the whole movie away to a certain degree. And I think a lot of movies, and we've covered a bunch on the show, suffer at the hands of this, where you're trying to hold back the most exciting moments, but you can't quite convey how exciting the actual movie is. And then I also, unfortunately for Mr. Dillon, don't believe him to be much of a movie star.
No, he very much gives off the henchman kind of vibe, the wisecracking best friend. He's not a leading man type.
Yes. And the other thing is you don't want to give away the sort of twists and turns that the characters take necessarily. So I think the movie just had a hard time translating into a sell that people were going to buy. But that being said, I think there's a lot underneath the surface here that I don't think the movie gets a lot of due. When people talk about it, they talk about the special effects, which are incredible, amazing physical effects that are true magic tricks. There are just these little pieces of information that all of these makeup effects and special effects people and behind the scenes people had picked up along the way from other movies and had combined them into making this creature seemingly come alive in ways the original could never really dream of. And I never want to take that away from the movie, but if you want all the details of that, like, it's readily available to you. Whereas what I find a little bit more interesting about the movie as a whole is that Darabont and Russell layer more than just Stephen King themes into the narrative of the film. They also couch the plot in the sort of slow decline of rural America that was happening during the mid to late 80s of the Reagan era. Arborville, like Amity Island before it, is a seasonal economy, this time focused on skiing. But with the drought of snow over the past few winters, this tiny burg is just struggling to survive. And as a result, it's desperately clinging to the elements that were its glory days, which just so happened to be mid-50s aesthetics. Just the social dynamics that revolve around Friday night football and people's dwindling interest in religion and perhaps going to the diner to eat after the fact.
And the town bad boy rides a motorcycle.
Exactly. And that's where I feel the movie is most at odds with making a rebel character that both seems like something that could feel akin to a Blackboard Jungle type, but doesn't make a lot of sense in a decrepit ski town that just can't get snow. I don't know, Colin, what is your take on the whole Kevin Dillon of it all?
Well, like I said, I like the switcheroo that the movie plays with in setting up who you think are going to be the stereotypical protagonists in a movie like this. And then it ends up being Kevin Dillon. I appreciate what they're doing with him being more the rebel who's got the heart of gold. Mm-hmm. He, even just simple choices that they're making when he wipes out on his motorcycle, when he tries to jump, he's got his goal, which is to jump this gap. And he wipes out in the first scene, and the hobo is laughing and clapping, and he kind of laughs along with him. It's a simple choice, but it endears us to him. It would be easy for him to get angry in a moment like that, but instead he laughs at himself a little bit. Well,
the movie's working so hard to make him seem at least kind of dangerous. You know, Jeffrey DeMunn's sheriff character gives him several side eyes and a lecture that he's no longer really welcome in town.
Yeah.
And so you get the feeling like he's not the worst person, but he's just petty larcenied himself into a bit of a corner when it comes to this burg.
They have a scene in the police station where they make comments about his parents. They can't get a hold of his mom, and that's not a surprise. And we can't get a hold of your dad because no one knows who it is. And it feels like it's one of those, nobody gave this kid a chance his whole life. Yeah. You know, it's like, I mean, he says it, I think he says as much when he jumps out of he uses his magic ratchet to open the door of the van.
Yes.
And she's like, Shawnee Smith says something like, just go on. you take care of yourself. That's what you're good at. And he's like, no one else signed up for the job. And it's like, yeah, he's kind of inhabited this role that the town gave him. It's not necessarily because he was somebody who was drawn to a life of crime. It's like one that was assigned to him by his own circumstance.
Yes. And to get anything that he might want, he just simply doesn't have the means to acquire it. Even if, he bought the motorcycle legally, in order to maintain it, he's going to have to maybe lift some motor oil, or maybe he's going to have to steal a tool set to keep it going. All of these things are things that he's just going to have to adapt to this environment, because the system of this town is not built for him to even succeed on any level. He doesn't fit in. That being said, I guess what it comes down to is it's not so much a character problem for me. I think it is specifically a Kevin Dillon problem. Now, that being, I don't need anyone else to denigrate Kevin Dillon. I'll take this on by myself. What I think one of the main issues here is, and Kevin Dillon will be the first to admit this, the wig extension to give him a mullet makes him look fucking ridiculous. He looks like a labradoodle who's been given a bad haircut.
It's the wig and we talked about this on the Patriot episode. It's the decision to put him in a Jerry Seinfeld poet shirt. Right. Which like, okay, like, dude, you're supposed to be like the town rebel. Like, you basically just have like, you're supposed to be wearing a t-shirt with a pack of cigarettes rolled up in one sleeve. Not yes. Like, wearing this like billowy dress shirt.
Yeah, I don't know. You see it really well in that police station scene, and that was the first time I saw it, and I was like, I don't know, is that supposed to be like a motorcycle shirt to protect yourself from road rash? Because it looks like it's for fencing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's like he looks like he's about to tour the revolution.
Yeah, it looks like he's gonna slide down a pirate ship sail with a knife.
I used to work for Universal Theme Parks, and I had to travel back and forth to Osaka, Japan, and Orlando, Florida, to recruit people and then train them in Japan and everything. And so one of the things that always amused me about Orlando at the time was it was the birthplace of the Pirate Dinner Theater.
Oh, yeah.
And the pamphlet for Pirate Dinner Theater, I don't think was made by marketing professionals. And at one point, superimposed over one image of swashbuckling, there was typography that read, "Surprise, Pirates." And there are many places where pirates might be a surprise, but Pirate Dinner Theater is not one of them, because over the entryway is a large sign that says Pirate Dinner Theater. Now, if the Amish show up and build a barn, that's a fucking surprise. But pirates, not so much.
That should have said like required pirates.
Well, the pamphlet said "surprise pirates," but then underneath was a screenshot of Kevin Dillon from the Blob, and that's what the surprise was. Is people were like, "Oh, this is an interesting looking pirates on motorcycles." That's
I never would have viewed this very oddly buttoned shirt as anything that would have any place in this military, industrial, sci-fi, horror actioner.
It only exists on the high seas.
All right, steak lovers, this one's for you. You know that moment when you slice into a perfectly cooked, melt-in-your-mouth steak? Pure magic. And that's exactly what Heartland Steak Company delivers. Hand-cut, Midwest-raised, premium meat, straight to your door, because you deserve the best. Growing up in Kansas with a butcher for a stepfather, I learned what real quality beef looks like. When Heartland Steak Company sent me their steaks for my honest opinion, let me tell you, they absolutely delivered. They know their craft, and it showed in every single bite. Build your perfect steak box or grab a grill-ready bundle. Either way, you're getting top-tier flavor. And here's the best part. $25 off any order of $175 or more. Just use promo code WOMEN at checkout. So go ahead, treat yourself. Head to heartlandsteakco.com, load up your cart, and don't forget, promo code WOMEN gets you that $25 off.
I think when it comes to the Kevin Dillon of it all, this demonstrates that this nepotism can only get you so far.
Yeah, I was going to say that again to bring up the Matt Dillon-ness of it all.
Exactly.
Is like Matt Dillon excelled in the soulful rebel role.
Yes, he did.
You've got Rumblefish. You've got
Tex.
You've got Tex. You've got the Outsiders, where particularly like in the Outsiders, he is the misunderstood rebel, where he's already been written off as a loser and no good, so he's going to live up to that, or live down to it, as it were. And Kevin Dillon he's trying. God bless him. He's trying, but there's just something that's not connecting. He's got too much of a puppy dog aspect to him.
He does. And I don't think the hair helps. They've put him in almost weirdly Han Solo cosplay, but he can't pull that off, and he can't pull off what Matt does, because Matt just has that thing that, for 6-7 years, he was just able to just turn it on, and he could be this kind of role, and to just go, well, here's this other, he went through a Brundlefly machine version of Matt Dillon. Will you accept him? And I think the answer for me is nah. No, I don't think so. I think it doesn't. Listen, I love almost everything about this movie, but and you hear Chuck Russell talk about it, the director, and he believes that Dillon was, quote, perfect for this, because he wanted to create a hero who refuses the call constantly, and he believes it's a good zag, and I do too. In theory, it's the Kevin Dillon-ness that somewhat brings it down for me. That being said, the Shawnee Smith of it all is, I think, the movie's absolute saving grace, because this film should have done so much better. It's a damn good time, and one of the main reasons for it is Shawnee Smith. She is decent, but not boring. She is attractive, but not privileged. Her character demonstrates who she is through actions and choices, not her father telling her what she is, or her mom telling her what she is, or someone's friend telling you what she is. You get to see her in action, make choices that prioritize other people, that prioritize her family, and that prioritize the town. And never in a boring yawn sort of way. Correct.
She's a very accessible and relatable heroine. Yeah. You get the impression she does not actually need anybody to help save her.
Yes, I agree. And I think the dynamics here go beyond Meg. And then the other part of this whammy that they tried to pull is Donovan Leitch's Paul Taylor, who's absolutely, put in the mold of the Steve McQueen original, and to have that rug pulled out from underneath you in the way that they do, in a way that is so memorable and so impactful, and in a way that only, I think, physical effects can do. Like, this is a magic trick that just defies your brain trying to figure out how they're doing it. It's this liquid that they used to put in milkshakes and silk material, and they rub it up against the front of his face, basically waterboarding him in real time, and he sticks with it long enough to give this pained expression like, oh my God, please get me out of this. And there's no way for Meg to do it. And it is such a heart-wrenching, terrifying moment that it elevates everything else that happens in this motion picture. And there's a lot of great stuff that happens here. Colin, what is your take on this?
I think his death is one of my favorites. I mean, I think it is my favorite. I just love this is a movie that absolutely delivers on the promise of the premise, which is blob stuff.
Yeah.
So it's like this movie, the thing I love so much about it, and the thing that I feel like is a great lesson in writing horror deaths, is they waste no blob in this movie. Every single, it's like, oh, we could just have Shawnee Smith pick up a gun off of a dead body, or we could have her pick up a gun off of a half melted dead body guy who got blobbed because he got blobbed. And so when we see the blob, he like melts half the hobo, but then it's such an amazing effect where he's screaming against this membrane, and she pulls his arm off, and then his head collapses.
Yes.
And it's like I don't know. Like for me watching it, I'm like, this I hoot and holler alone watching this because I'm having such a good time. And that opening is such a statement of everything that you want to see a blob do, like a corrosive big stomach that undulates around town. Don't worry, we're gonna do that for you. You want to see a guy get crushed by a blob that melts him? We're gonna do that.
Yes. It really demonstrates the actual threat of the blob more than the idea in your head of the blob.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's ultimately one of the elements that really brings this movie to the fore of the great 80s remake boom between this and Carpenter's Thing and The Fly, is that they take these very sci-fi concepts that they did to the best of their ability in that decade, but elevate them with the most cutting edge practical effects that they could dream up at this moment in time, and then set them up to succeed. Because the sequence that leads to his death is he wanders in to see how this unhoused man is doing, and finds that his throat is full of blob.
I was going to say, not well, as it turns out.
Turns out the American healthcare system is not helping him in this moment in time.
He's been better.
He is a husk, and we don't know how much of a husk until the blanket is pulled off by Jack Nance, who flies in here to play the straightest role he's ever played in his life, harumphing when he's interrupted telling another patient that her husband's about to die. I'm not really sure what's going on there. It's not good. And Donovan Leitch is like, you need to see what's going on with this guy. Drags him in. And then half of that man is gone. And then Donovan Leitch runs to another room to make a phone call. The door closes behind him, and you get that holy shit. He doesn't know he's sharing a room with the blob.
Yeah.
And it shows you the threat, that it's sneaky, that it can be imperceptible, that it can climb, and that
it knows how to close a fucking door.
Right. It's barely heard of doors.
It doesn't have thumbs.
It understands guns. It understands bombs. It understands doors. It's not like the ghosts in The Fog who are like, I know how a gas station works. You're like, the fuck you know how a gas station works? You're a sea-bound ghost who hasn't been around for 100 years. Not that I dislike The Fog. I just find that hilarious.
Yeah, you mentioned something, Patrick, about how, the similarities between this and The Thing and The Fly, other than the obvious that they're all remakes, is they also, have this they have similar pacing in which they take a little bit of time, just enough time to develop the characters. And then then each of them has, one pretty shocking moment. In The Thing, it's the dog attack scene. In The Fly, I would hazard to say that The Fly's big shocker is the arm wrestling scene. where he was like,
Yeah,
okay, he's really strong
Right.
in an abnormal way. Like you should not be able to do that to another
Yes.
person. And here it's Paul's death. And then after all three of those scenes, like it does not let up for a second after that.
Right.
It's just,
It is
it's
a
just
runaway
chaos
train.
from that moment till the end of the movie.
Yes. And you know, chaos that still allows each of these characters to demonstrate who they are and the things that they want and how they operate in the world, how that changes or doesn't change based on this very extreme event, and makes it cinematic. It's really, really impressive. Like, of all of Russell's films, I do think I find this the most impressive achievement. It's pretty incredible that this happened, and pretty sucky that TriStar, although I do believe they believed in it, just couldn't figure out a way to tell people it was in theaters in August, because this is a great August horror movie.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
When I praise this over something, let's say like A Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors, I think a lot of people get their dander up because that's a lot of people's favorites. And we've examined that film in a multi-part series, but I do think it shares a little bit of DNA in this in one particular aspect. So, Colin, here's a question that I've asked many a guest, and I'm wondering what your answer will be. When I ask just off the top of my head, you don't need to know the character names. You could just tell me the performer who plays them or what their role is. But when I ask you, who is the main character of the Dream Warriors, what character would you name?
Freddy Krueger.
Freddy Krueger would be a good one. He's definitely the antagonist. Certainly the person we care about the most, because he's so good at personal development, about helping people see their potential right before they die. Some might say Nancy, although she enters a little bit late. Mm-hmm. Some might say, oh, the first character that we meet, and she brings people into their dreams, and she's kind of the driving engine of the entire movie. But no, I scream into the sky, because absolutely no one mentions the person who makes almost every discovery and kills off Freddy in the third act, and that is Dr. Neil Gordon. Do you remember who Dr. Neil Gordon is?
Yeah, he's the guy that sits with the kids and listens to them talk about their Freddy dreams. And yes. Nancy tries to convince him, and he's like, hey, what are you doing later?
Yeah, it's Craig fucking Wasson. Yeah. And for whatever reason, he's the one who makes all of the leaps and discovers the ghost nun, and his belief in the dream realm is what the movie revolves around. And then for whatever reason, Nancy, the last person we've seen beat Freddy in the real world, phantasm bed notwithstanding, she goes, oh, no. I'll go into the dream realm because that's where I excel based on previous experience. Not you hang out with my deadbeat dad and you kill Freddy in the real world. Yeah. And every time I watch it, it makes me crazy. And I'm not entirely sure why Darabont and Russell made that decision. I'm sure they have lots of rationales. It's certainly not what you would expect. And it's certainly not what anyone remembers from the movie. And yet when I watch it, it's all I can fucking see. And so I feel like this in the Blob is trying to correct for that in some way, shape, or form. They're trying because they want to make Shawnee Smith the main character here, because she's the person you root for the most and who sacrifices the most to come out the other end of it. She really is a grand hero of this. She rescues Kevin Dillon as much as Kevin Dillon rescues her. And I think she's the person most people remember from the movie.
Yeah.
But
oh, yeah.
I also feel like Kevin Dillon is getting a little Craig Wasson treatment because they both have curly hair. Is that a thing, Gina? Am I crazy? Have I driven my personal mania for Craig Wasson to this point?
Yeah, it's possible because I do think that Kevin Dillon has slightly more charisma than Craig Wasson does. Let's give him a little credit where credit is due.
You're absolutely right. We should never denigrate Kevin Dillon's performance by comparing it in any way, qualitative or quantitative, with Craig Wasson, a man we've talked about so fucking much on this podcast.
How did he? We talked about maybe it was Clu Gulager or George Kennedy or the actor who has inadvertently shown up the most often in the movies. It might be Craig Wasson at this point, especially after we end up doing Ghost Story, which we are at some point. Stay
tuned. Ghost Story is in the lineup here, everybody. It's going to happen at a very appropriate time of year, but I think that's the end of what we can talk about with Craig Wasson. Mercifully, I don't know he's appeared in any movies that we can discuss at length. And if he has, please hit us in the titties and tell us where else Craig Wasson has been in a horror movie so that we can also denigrate him there. A man we've heard nothing but nice things about in real life, but whose on-screen presence seems to create a demon in me. And that's really unfair to him, but also he knows what he did.
He created that demon in you.
Just let him sit in that.
He also is not aware we're alive, Colin, and that's fine. No one needs to tell him. He does not need to know that we are in a one-sided beef with his cinematic career exclusively from 1980 to 1987. So there's that. Who haven't we talked about? Oh, this movie has a rich vein of dicks. This movie has these side characters. Apparently this town, you're like one person away from maybe knowing the worst person alive.
Right.
And, as lovely as Paul is in many, many respects, he is kind, he's considerate. He would never do the things that his friend Scott Jeske does. Mm-hmm. But also, he hangs out with Scott Jeske. And that is a slight indictment of him, or at least the town of Arborville.
He does. And you look at his immediate reaction to when the guy runs out of the woods with the blob on his hand to Kevin Dillon. And he seemingly wants to prioritize possibly beating Kevin Dillon up over getting this man to the hospital.
Yes.
And it's like, this is a first date. And Shawnee Smith's like in the passenger seat, like, there's a dying man in here. Can you two cut it out? He's like, he has been surprised. Get in that car.
He has been surprised. And I don't know about you, Colin. I mean, you've made horror movies. Obviously, I assume you might show up to a screening or two of The Jester if you have not shown up to the previous films with an audience. Have you ever done that before?
We just had early screening of Jester 2 at Midsummer Scream. So
there you go.
Got to see with an audience there.
You were in my town. So, there's this phenomena that happens when dudes get scared. And I mentioned earlier my experience with Universal Studios. And I was just lamenting the other day with a previous guest about what people are like in that situation. And that there is this one subsection of dude who goes out of their way to be in an environment they know people are going to leap out of them and go boogity boogity. And if they get scared, they get angry that this occurred and they've paid. And tickets are not cheap to a Halloween Horror Nights. They have paid quite well to have this experience. And their reaction to it is violence. Now, that seems to have lessened over the years, but I've only been punched in the face a few times. But one of them was at a Halloween Horror Nights. And I promise you, it has left an impression on my desire to Halloween Horror Night ever again. Yeah. As much as I love every other component of this thing that is so horror coded and so lovingly rendered to scare people and have people a good time. It's that one guy who reacts with violence to getting scared. And in a way, Paul Taylor is that guy.
Yeah, he might be acting tough in front of Shawnee Smith, but
Also, he has a concussion. No one has done a concussion protocol
that's right.
on Paul. And it is quite possibly that he is coasting through life, looking at it through a pinhole.
Yeah.
in the blue blackness. He should not be driving. That is first and foremost. He shouldn't be driving himself or anyone else. He is in need of real medical attention.
Yeah, he just had a major head injury.
Yeah. But that head injury does not explain his friendship with Scott Jeske, who is a legit sexual assault artist.
Keyword
is artist.
In that very 80s teen movie way.
In that very 80s teen movie way that seems to view trying to convince a woman to have sex as almost a Mission Impossible level set of gadgets, gear, and preambles.
Yeah.
And like, we have to wait until 96's Scream to have you considered my penis. Scott Jeske is never asking that question. It's implied in every move he makes. He's not waiting to ask about penis consideration. He's putting his penis first and foremost. And that includes basically getting a woman so drunk in his car that he can feel her up. And the only thing that stops him this time is a gelatinous pink blob.
Yeah, that's presumably like fully inside of her body.
It has consumed her from within. It has pulled the hobo trick. What I enjoy about this version of the Blob is that you get several ways in which Blob says, I eat you. Sometimes he swat you like fly. Sometimes he pick you up. Sometimes Blob eat you outside in. Sometimes Blob suck you through pipe. Sometimes Blob just weasels his way in one end, God knows where, and comes out your face.
Yeah. Whereas in the 50s version, he just kind of rolled over you.
Right. Yes. It is that scene from, International Man of Mystery, the steamroller scene, where people are like, no, and the steamroller is a good 50 yards away from Michael McDonald. And that's the best they could do at the time. But here they, as Colin, you said, they give you every flavor of Blob kill.
Every flavor of Blob, baby. And it's endlessly creative. Like watching this now, it's like you see him start to unbutton her blouse and you're like, all right, something's going on with the Blob here, but I'm trying to figure out what. And the last thing you expect is the Blob to leap out of her face. It's so good. And that shot, I assume it's like revert. They do every single trick in the book and they keep you guessing with every Blob technique that they do. But the Blob, when it shoots out of her and like crawls up his chest and up his face, it's so good.
Yeah, it's got
the special effects guy.
We didn't mention the Blob also can make little tentacles, and it appears to be made completely out of acid.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah,
they make him a bit of a xenomorph, and so in many ways, we probably could have covered this in season 4 when we did the whole alien thing, because he is a big, movable feast. Everywhere he goes, he's just digesting you. But he can only digest so much of you, and it's kind of slow. It doesn't, and yet it's super, super strong, because that gag, when he pulls a guy through the industrial sink by his arm down a pipe, is so fucking good. Oh my God, I love this movie.
Yeah, that shot when they burst in, you see both feet and an arm up in frame and blood shooting out. And one of the feet doesn't have his shoe on anymore. It's like, I know exactly what's happening.
Yeah. No, it really communicates a lot with a little, right?
Yeah.
Because it can't show you every part, because it would just look like Nancy's mom at the end of the first Nightmare on Elm Street. You're like, I know that's a mannequin. Like they can only look so real. That's a dream. That's fine. I'm not denigrating that movie. It's my favorite nightmare. I love it. I love it. I love it. But what I think Russell really gets here in how he presents these attacks is that he shows you just enough of each stage to let your mind fill in the gaps of exactly what's happening, which is the best special effect in the world.
Yeah.
And there's just no way at the time. Even now, I think you would have a lot of trouble really conveying that looking as good as this because your mind is filling in the gaps.
Yeah, for sure.
And something else you mentioned earlier that I think is important to talk about in terms of like Sheriff Herb. This is the first collab between Jeffrey DeMunn and Frank Darabont, which goes on to be a very big thing in both their careers. They're sort of each other's lucky charm, which is always, the catbird seat for an actor, I think. And I think in a lot of 80s horror movies, someone like Sheriff Herb would be very one note. I think he would essentially sort of be what his deputy's character sort of is with Paul McCrane, who's so good at being an a-hole. Like, it's almost a shame. Like, I've never heard a bad thing about Paul McCrane, but my God, if you put him in a role where he's got to be kind of an asshole, he's so good at it.
It's wild because have you ever seen Fame?
Oh yeah, exactly.
He just plays this
so sympathetic in that.
This delicate little boy just dealing with his sexuality, and he's so sweet and gentle. And then like he's gone on to a long and fruitful career playing complete and utter dicks.
To the point where on the nation's favorite TV show at the time, ER, a helicopter fell on his ass
twice,
and America stood up and said, "More."
Say he got brutally attacked by a helicopter twice.
He's also been melted multiple times between this and RoboCop. His body has been desecrated. And he's such a nice person in every other respect. He's the anti-Wasson. Actually, let's not bring Wasson into this. Let's not. We don't know that to be true. So I think in many other films, the Sheriff Herb character would just be the guy who hates on Kevin Dillon's character. But in here we get multitudes. He does have this bittersweet romance with Candy Clark's Fran that is set up in this little aside, and you kind of feel like, oh, they'll find each other at the end and it'll be this whole sweet. Nope. They're killed mid-act 2. Just gone. And the most brutal reveal, and then Candy Clark's death is another one that is so devastating. Her character in no way deserves any of this. And I would say that's true for the majority of the characters. And yet everyone's death is sort of equalized in that Blob don't care. Blob need to eat.
Yeah, the only character that deserved it, I would say, is that kid.
Sure. Yes.
The kid in the sewer.
The kid in the sewer. And like, that's one of those things where I think this movie gets a lot of credit, and it should, that a lot of these characters might feel like they have a bit of plot armor to them. And yet it doesn't really hold back. It introduces people and gives them empathy and sets them up to do bigger and better things. And then goes, nope, they get blobbed. And that kid gets sucked down into sewer water. It's almost an indignity that goes beyond Scott in the fact that the kid's greatest sin up to this point is he has zero theater etiquette. He's the worst. He's listening to a Walkman while watching a Friday the 13th ripoff.
Yeah.
Let those filmmakers worked at least a few days on that dialogue. Let those characters have those moments. This is why we started Kill by Kill in the first place, Gina.
True, but as I do want to say that in doing a little poking around for what the general consensus of this movie is, and it is very positive. I have seen in a few places people claiming that this was the first horror movie to show a child's death on screen, and well, that's not true. There are a couple. That is not true. There were a couple. I mean, obviously you've got Jaws. You've got which I'm pretty sure might actually be the first one. You've got on a somewhat lesser known basis, you've got Damien, The Omen 2, when he gives that kid a brain aneurysm, I guess. I mean, the kid collapses and dies. And of course you've got
he also causes a couple kids to drown underneath ice.
That's true. Yeah. Well, no, just the old man. The old man that was the one who drowned.
Oh, just the old man.
And also we have.
I'm always closing my eyes during that sequence. My thing with drowning under ice. I can't. I couldn't even handle the invisible force field.
We also have our personal favorite, the baby who gets ate by a rat in Deadly Eyes. Now, fair, you don't see that on.
Oh my God!
You don't see it on screen, but it's pretty obvious what happens. But yeah,
but what happened.
But this is. I would certainly say this is other than Alex Kintner. This is certainly the most brutal on-screen child death so far. But it's not. I've got to argue it's not the first.
No, it is not the first. I think it might be the first where the kid gets anaconded back out for he's like semi-digested and then comes back up as if the blob's like, see, this is going to be you. There's no point in the blob just spitting
He's
him
giving
up.
Those skeleton hugs.
He might be proto-skeleton hug. I mean, he's very close to skeleton hug. That's for damn sure. Colin, do you have a personal skeleton hug? And that is where a moment in a movie in which a skeleton reaches out for one last hug from a human being.
I don't know. My favorite skeleton hugs, I guess, have always been the bizarre scene in Raiders when they escape the Well of Souls and all those mummies come to life for a second. But
it's sort of an orgy of skeleton hugs in that one.
Yeah,
absolutely right.
It's Karen Allen. Like I would get it if I were dead for thousands of years in that tomb, and then Karen Allen showed up in that dress. I would try to give her a hug, probably. But
I need a little human touch, Karen. Come on.
The kid leaping out of the way. He reminded me of the end of the first Friday the 13th when Frog Boy Freddy jumps out of the water. But his posture reminded me of the Happy Birthday xenomorph that kills Tom Skerritt in Alien when he turns around he's in the vent and he turns and he does the happy birthday hands.
Daddy. Pick me up.
The jazz hands.
I want to see hi.
It looks a little like one of those lawn Halloween decorations that leaps forward at you.
Sure. A biomechanical skeleton hug. I agree with that. Of course, I think for us, Gina, the ultimate skeleton hug is still Amityville 3D when this movie's Candy Clark gets liquefied by fire inside of a car, and then someone opens the car door and the skeleton goes, this has been traumatic for me. Can you bring it in? And just reaches out in 3D for a big old hug.
With the accompanying shriek, which is what gives that extra flair to a skeleton hug.
It does. My child tried to make a skeleton hug t-shirt for us and has failed. So far, he's tried every trick in the book, but he really is dry. He's he likes the concept of skeleton hugs. And so I find that endearing, as everything he does is endearing to me. So in the end, this becomes a giant action movie in a way that once they discover that cold is the only thing that seems to make the blob retreat in any way, shape, or form, they get the snowmaking truck and ram it into the blob, but are unable to kind of figure out how to make it explode until, lo and behold, there's an empty bag of dynamite that Shawnee Smith is able to attach to it. Then her shoelace gets caught on the side of a truck. It's a whole thing. It's a lot of action beats. but it's still very, very enjoyable. Does it make any sense? No. Do I need 1988's The Blob to make sense? No, I do not. It's not why I bought a fucking ticket, and it's not why anyone else is picking up the Blu-ray or, deciding to hit play at home or buying a ticket in a revival house to it. It makes sense because the Blob makes sense.
Yes.
Any other things that you just need to get off your chest before the Blob consumes it, Colin?
I don't know. I love the. You know what? I think the end makes sense. They set it's a satchel charge that they set up by that whatever his name, like the captain guy.
Yeah.
That when the scientist, quote unquote, finally gets like Blob sucked into the hole, which again is another one where it's like you could just suck a guy into a manhole, but no, they have the Blob shoot up into his suit and then rip his gun in half.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. But I love that once that guy's dead, the other guy in charge is like, all right, fuck all that stuff. I'm going to do what I wanted to do before, which is shoot at the Blob and then throw bombs at him. And it doesn't work. I love his death where the Blob explodes out of the ground and then he's got 2 grenades on his chest and he pulls the pins on him right as the Blob crushes him. And it's almost set up like this last heroic move that he's going to make in self-sacrifice.
Yeah.
And you just see Kevin Dillon run by frame and the Blob's in the background. You see 2 little explosions go off inside the Blob and it doesn't matter. Like that guy set those grenades off and it didn't matter at all to the Blob.
It didn't do anything. That's the wild thing about it. I think the danger of it is made rather explicit throughout. Yeah. Like the Blob's hunger is endless and its need for more will always be unsatisfied. It's too decentralized to destroy with conventional weapons, and the heat of war actually increases its mass. It's almost as if committing violence and acts of war are unrewarding and don't accomplish their aims. But that's neither here nor there, or a scathing indictment of Reagan's America or the military-industrial complex. Gino, what say you about 1988's The Blob before we say goodbye?
I mean, I just love that it ends with a little baby blob in a jar.
With Dale Close doing a Herald.
He's just gonna treat that. It's a precursor to a Tamagotchi. Yeah, he's got his little friend in a jar. He's gonna nurture it. Yeah. He's gonna raise it. His little baby boy or girl. We won't know till later.
We don't need to know the Blob's gender. That's not really important. It's just a pink blob that eats everything, and really, gender reveals aren't going to matter in the end.
No, we're all going to die. But you putting this in with our run of Stephen King is really, really, really smart, because this has got so much like Stephen King coded stuff in it, right down to the religious figure who whose brain snaps in the middle of everything and ends up becoming here he's kind of a set up antagonist, but it doesn't really play into the plot of the movie itself. But either way though, like he's just like I serve the Blob now.
I serve the Blob. Yes. Oh my God. It's so good. It's just a really fun movie that every once in a while I think needs to be shouted from the rooftops. Yeah. Because there are a lot of movies in the world. Some would say maybe a skosh too many, but certainly never enough. And you kind of have to remind people of the Blob's existence, and that more than just hearing about it, they should go out and watch it because it's a damn good time.
Yeah.
So what also is a damn good time for us, not for the people who suffered these fates. And that's Choosing Your Own Deathventure. That's where we decide of the many, many, many deaths portrayed in 1988's The Blob. If you were to die in one of those ways, well, which one would you choose and why? Up for bid today, we have melted in half, melted from the outside, arm ripped off, eaten from the inside, melted from the arm up in an attempted sexual assault, pulled into an industrial sink, eaten outside of a diner, crushed by Blob inside a phone booth, melted into ceiling, pulled into ceiling to be melted. Multiple people eaten inside of a movie theater. Just a lady on the floor by popcorn. Half her face is melted. That's not good. Pulled into the water by Blob. Tentacled by Blob. Fly swatted by Bob. Die in sewer explosion. Crushed under advancing Blob. Tentacled. Immolated by flamethrower. Pulled in half through bookshelf. Eaten by Blob from foot upwards, and then have your gun cut in half. And then, of course, the Blob is frozen to death, most of it. And of course, Colin, you're our guest, so I call on you to go first.
It's tough because I would choose my favorite death, but that's not what I would want to happen to me.
Sure. That's the conundrum here. Which one would you choose?
So I think this might, I don't know what the rules are, but I would pick the projectionist guy because I don't know what it was about watching it this time, but I would want to be that guy because I want to live in the few seconds he had before he gets blobbed, where he's reading comic books up in the projection booth by the light of the projector, projecting some garbage slasher movie in 1988. And I'm like, this is making me nostalgic for a time that I was never alive for. So I just want to be that guy reading comics up in the projector booth. And then I get blobbed. That's the trade-off. But I look really cool.
And you have a yo-yo.
You do have a yo-yo.
And I have a yo-yo, yeah.
A noisy yo-yo on top of it.
Yeah.
So how are your yo-yo skills? Are you going to be able to do that even though you're kind of melted inside of a gelatinous, not even cube?
I think my yo-yo skills are on par with his. You don't see him he's not doing too many like competition level tricks. He's just idly using the yo-yo. Mm-hmm. So
a fidget spinner of its time. Yes.
Yeah.
That's completely understandable. Gina, what say you?
I'm a fan of the quick and, I don't think anybody's deaths are particularly easy in this one.
Yeah.
But I think the quickest is certainly just getting, slapped by a blob tentacle.
So you're pretty much dying by impact, and the eating component of it is something you're not along for.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Yeah. The last thing that's going through your mind is concrete, basically. Then I think I'm going to take die in sewer explosion. I would rather get exploded than eaten. Eaten is one of those things I'm just not going to take as an option. I don't care how it is presented. That is not something I am cool with in any way, shape, or form.
Which sewer explosion? Are you in the sewer? Or you're the guy sitting in the van
outside who die when the sewer explodes. Yes.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah. Just impact death, just a concussive blast.
You have no idea it's coming either.
No. I've left the building at that point. It's not really my job to know. Yeah. I'm just part of the military industrial complex, and my family are going to see no benefits from it, and that's the way I want it. That just about does it. But before we go, Josh Hollis does all of our artwork. Go to joshhollis.com for that. Go to Revenge Body Memphis at bandcamp.com for this theme and all of the remixes. Find us on social media. Talk back to us on Letterboxd or Spotify or YouTube. Those are all great places to tell us what you think. If you see us up on your social medias, give us a heart, give us a like, and tell your friends about us. Give us a review if you haven't. That's the way we're seen and heard by more people. Colin, you got a movie that's coming out in mere days from now via Phantom Events. How can people get tickets to go see The Jester 2?
The Jester 2 is going to be out September 15th and 16th. And Fathom Events is the one putting it out in theaters. It's going to be nationwide, so most places should be able to see it. If you just go to fathomevents.com, you'll be able to see it. You can also check out Dread social media page, my social media. We all have links there to it. But yeah, September 15th and 16th. It's a special 2-day event.
And people, listen, I love to watch a movie alone at home in the safety of my domicile. But there's nothing quite like seeing a horror movie in a movie theater with a crowd. that's the way they're meant to be seen. And this is a way to see it in just that fashion when they might not otherwise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think my hope is that people have a lot of fun with it. So the more people that we can get to go see the movie, the more people can have fun.
Exactly. Gina, where can people find you on these here internets?
I write about movies and... can you hear me? Hello?
No, you're there. There was a long delay. I got worried.
Oh, no. Can you hear me now?
You got blobbed.
Yeah, I know. It happened. Finally
Yes,
happened. Okay, so I write about movies and television and pop culture on my newsletter, GinaWatchesThings.ghost.io.
Excellent. Do it today, people. Check it out. Don't worry, folks. The body count will continue. For myself, Gina, and Colin, bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.